Welcome to the relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. It appears that the Marlen Esparza versus Gabriela Alaniz rematch is set to land March 16th on the undercard of William Zepeda versus Maxi Hughes. The mandated rematch between Marlen Esparza and former WBO champion Gabriela Alaniz of Argentina. The rematch was ordered at the request of Gabriela Alaniz's promoter on the premise that the scoring in the fight did not reflect the fight itself and it was too partial to the house fighter. The WBO themselves reviewed the fight and agreed. Thus, they have ordered it. What's interesting to me is I don't anticipate that Marlen Esparza is going to stay at flyweight beyond this fight, which begs the question, then why is she going through with it? I think she's going to move up. Win or lose, I think she's going to move up to super flyweight after this. I don't think she's going to stick around. I don't think she's going to unify with Gabriela Fundora. I don't think she's going to satisfy her WBC mandatory Kenya Enriquez. I think whatever happens with Gabriela in the rematch, Marlen is going to move up, which begs the question, then why do it? Why fight her again? Remove all doubts? Well, that's a very romantic way of looking at it. Rematches are often won by the fighter who can change. Rematches are often won by the fighter who can make the most adjustments. And even if Marlen Esparza arguably lost the first fight, she may win the second. She may win it more clearly on that premise, that rematches are won by the fighter who can adjust. She's the more cerebral fighter of the two, where Marlen is the boxer, Gabriela is the puncher, the pressure fighter. And pressure fighters, generally speaking, they don't change much from one fight to the next. Pressure fighters, more often than not, stay pressure fighters from one fight to the next. Through and through, these are the kind of fighters that stay in character. So I don't expect to see very many changes in Gabriela's strategy from the first fight to the second, whereas Marlen, she can tweak things, adjust things. Gabriela Alaniz is the stronger puncher of the two, the more prolific puncher, busier within a round, busier throughout a fight. That's not going to change. If Marlen is smart, she'll take notice of that and incorporate it to her strategy, that in front of her she's got a fighter that's going to open up quite a bit, so counter-punching, working off the counter, emphasis on it, might get her the win, a more decisive victory, and afterwards, as stated, I expect her to move up because the champions at super flyweight are more beatable than the remaining champion at flyweight, than Gabriela Fundora, that division's IBF champion. At flyweight, there are only two champions. It's Marlen Esparza, who I just talked about, and Gabriela Fundora. Gabriela's dangerous. I would give Marlen Esparza better odds against any of the four champions at super flyweight than what I would give her against Gabriela. And for Marlen, I don't imagine making the flyweight limit has become easier over time. Her body may be urging her to move up. I expect that she will, beyond the Gabriela Alaniz rematch, at which point she'll vacate the titles she currently holds at flyweight. The WBC will go to Kenya Enriquez. Hard punching Kenya Enriquez of Mexico. The WBO title, that might go to the young up-and-comer Marilyn Badillo, who we've talked about here on the channel, also from Mexico. WBA title might go to either Jackie Calvo or Viviana Ruiz of Australia. That could be the lay of the land if Marlen moves up and if she vacates the titles she currently holds. And I expect that she will. Gabriela Alaniz was a handful for Marlen Esparza. That was a difficult fight, but an even more difficult fight would be a Kenya Enriquez fight. An even more difficult fight would be a Gabriela Fundora fight. And they're knocking on her door. They're right there. There's just not enough money in it for Marlen, I think, to keep her at flyweight. She's going to leave. She's going to go. She's going to start the process over up there at super flyweight. That's what I expect her to do. Win or lose. Unfortunately for the former champion, unfortunately for Gabriela Alaniz, it's becoming increasingly difficult to win a decision, a fair decision, against Marlen Esparza. And short of a knockout, she won't win. Men's lightweight news. Ennis, the father of Jaron Ennis, who trains amateur upstart Andy Cruz, is happy with Cruz but rules out Jaron Boots Ennis for Ben. Connor Ben. We'll break this conversation down into two parts. Coach Ennis was pleased with his Cuban hotshot Andy Cruz, who banked 10 rounds in just his third professional fight, winning every session against Mexican Brian Samarripa. Cruz went 3-0 at the Caribe Royale in Orlando, Florida, and afterwards said the fight had been like a sparring session. I thought he did a great job tonight, said the Philadelphia trainer and father of welterweight star Jaron Ennis. He, Andy Cruz, had a guy that was supposed to be putting pressure on him, but he was mostly running and tying you up. If he had stood there and fought, he would have stopped him.
It was a one-sided affair from start to finish.
For what it's worth, I think Andy Cruz looked fantastic for a guy who was in only his third professional fight. He only has 3 fights. Samahripa was a lot more experienced and intended to push Andy Cruz.
Because he's a Mexican slugger, because he's more experienced.
He wasn't able to do that because Andy was too tricky for him, too fast on his feet, too elusive, too much snap on the punches. After a while, Brian was just fighting to survive, fighting to make it out of the round, essentially fighting negative, moving from one end of the ring to the next. So when a guy's determined not to get knocked out,
he stops engaging.
Once a guy stops engaging, it's hard to catch him in between the shots, in between the punches, because he's not throwing punches, making it that much harder to land that knockout shot, that knockout blow. Talks have circulated around the potentiality of Andy Cruz renewing his amateur rivalry with top-ranked own Keyshawn Davis. Cruz has said it's over to Davis if they want to box as pros, and Ennis would be happy to see them meet in a rerun of the Tokyo Olympic final, which Cruz won. Ennis has faith in Matchroom and is confident they will make the right moves for the Cuban. Whatever Matchroom says, I'm just a trainer, said Ennis. Asked about the possibility of meeting Davis. I don't control that, but I think he's ready for him. Davis, I think he's ready for him now. I think by this time next year, he being Andy Cruz, would have already achieved something by winning a title or something. He's on the right track. Now! Asked to call out lightweight targets, Ennis replied, whoever's got the titles, but we've still got to work our way up to the titles.
That's gonna be a bitch.
3 to 4 major titles at lightweight are over there at Top Rank. Andy Cruz is with Matchroom. Do you think that Top Rank is going to give Andy access to their fighters, to their champions?
No.
Do you think they're going to give Andy access to WBC champion Shakur Stevenson, Vasyl Lomachenko if he wins the IBF, Emmanuel Navarrete if he wins the WBO?
No.
Becoming a champion at lightweight for Andy Cruz could prove tricky. The one title I think he should go after, as strange as this might sound, is the WBA title.
Gervonta's title?
Gervonta's belt, that's right. Gervonta Davis, who's still on the PBC side of things, the PBC that are going through financial hardships right now.
The well is drying up.
Relevance of that to Andy Cruz is he can fight in those WBA eliminators, get in position to fight for the title.
Become a mandatory.
I know what you're thinking to yourself. You're thinking, even if he becomes Gervonta Davis's mandatory, inside this calendar year, Gervonta's not going to fight him.
I'm not saying that he will. I'm saying with Matchroom's backing, he can force Gervonta Davis into an uncomfortable situation that financially the PBC may not be equipped for.
In previous years, it's been rumored that the PBC has a rather unethical relationship with the WBA, that the WBA seems partial to PBC fighters, but with the PBC not having the same resources that they used to, the same money, what effect do you think that's going to have on their relationship with the WBA?
Will they hold as much sway when they don't have as much money to pay them off, to do them favors?
Taking Andy Cruz up the WBA route here and now, as strange as this might sound, might be his best bet to get him a belt, because that would force Gervonta into a situation that he doesn't want to be in, and perhaps a situation that the PBC cannot afford.
It's just something to think about.
Taking Andy Cruz up the WBA route may not be such a bad idea, because they might be able to impose a mandatory on Gervonta, at which point Gervonta, he's not going to fight this guy. He'll give up his belt before he fights this guy. I know it all looks a certain way now, but what you have to ask yourself is, in a year's time, how much sway will the PBC still have with the WBA if the money's all dried up?
The subject of Jaron Ennis came up.
Boots Ennis, who has been enduring contractual issues and has been called to fight Cody Crowley by the IBF, but Ennis said he had not spoken with Matchroom through the week about his son because he was in Florida on cruise business. Promoter Eddie Hearns has made no secret of his admiration for Ennis as of late, but Bozy was not interested in talking about that. It's not Boots time, it's Andy time, he said. He did, however, reveal that Boots had been paired with Mario Barrios on March 30th until Barrios withdrew, and was then asked about his son being mentioned as a potential opponent for Englishman Conor Benn. No, for what, said Ennis. Conor Benn doesn't have anything that we want. We want to clean 147 out, clean the titles up, and then we move to 154. The current welterweight king is Terence Crawford, but he has said fighting Boots is unlikely, although Bozy thinks his son will be able to pick up the belts when Crawford vacates. I don't think that's going to happen. Ennis said of Boots versus Crawford, Crawford, already said Crawford is going to get a big fight and move on. He said Boots is the new guy at 147. The story last year was that Jaron Ennis was supposed to make his next ring appearance on the undercard of Benavidez versus Andrade. That didn't happen. Then the story became that he would return in March 30th, on the undercard of Tszyu versus Thurman against Barrios. Now that's not happening. The latest rumors suggested that Boots' next fight would land on the undercard of Canelo Alvarez's next fight, presumably on the PBC, except now Canelo's leaving the PBC. So what does that mean for Boots?
Means he's fucked.
I've always felt that Boots wants to go to the PBC. He wants to be a PBC fighter, even though he isn't one yet. And that desire may be costing him a lot of time, thinking that Al Haymon and his PBC can do something for him that Matchroom can't.
Boots has got a legal battle with his old promoter, now boxing. He wants to achieve free agency, while Cody Crowley is represented by TGB Promotions, which is just another way of saying PBC. He's actually the PBC fighter.
Which at least theoretically is what still holds Boots to the PBC, even if he's not a PBC guy.
How long is it going to take them to schedule a Cody Crowley fight? That doesn't strike me as a fight that should take all that long to make.
Who fucking cares? For all the hullabaloo about Jaron Boots Ennis, he's not the first talented fighter whose talent may end up squandered as a result of his own decisions or his team's. I mean, seriously, it's not a Greek tragedy. Not to me.
It's not the first time I've seen that happen, and it won't be the last.
So, if him doing his best to try and become a PBC fighter results in him losing more time, more postponements, more delays, if that's what that results in, you made your bet and you have to lie in it.
Fuck it.
If he were on the Matchroom side of things, there are a good number of fights that they could make for him that are not necessarily high-profile fights, but you tell me, how many high-profile fights are left at 147 anyway?
Zero.
So the next best thing for a fighter like Boots is fight dates, activity, getting out there and getting active. But he can't do that if he's all tied up with the PBC. And he seems to want to be all tied up with the PBC. So you can stay on that side. You can stay over there and see if it works out for you. The show must go on, and it will go on, with or without Boots.
If Matchroom were in charge, I think they could get that Cody Crowley fight done in a more timely fashion than the PBC, but not just a Cody Crowley fight, a Kavaliauskas fight, a Cobbs fight, Blair Cobbs,
Michael McKinson, Radzav Butaev, Emantis Stanionis. I feel that if Matchroom were at the helm of promotion, not only would these fights happen, but they would happen in a more timely fashion for Jaron Boots Ennis, who when last we heard was supposed to be making his next ring appearance on the undercard of Canelo Alvarez's next fight, presumably if he had stayed with the PBC, but he's not staying with the PBC. Canelo Alvarez has reportedly now mutually agreed to split from Al Haymon's PBC, as they couldn't agree to terms for a Jermall Charlo fight on May 4th. It's claimed that Canelo may now face Edgar Berlanga in May and Jaime Munguia in September.
Shifting the focus.
Saying that they mutually agreed to part ways is just another way of saying that Al Haymon couldn't hold up his end of the bargain. He couldn't honor the deal as it was. The deal that they agreed to last year, the 3-fight deal, how could that deal be contingent upon Canelo fighting a fighter that isn't one of Al Haymon's fighters?
What are you telling me? You're telling me he went from DAZN and Matchroom over to the PBC to fight a fighter that he could have fought on DAZN?
That you can't pay this guy his guarantee unless he fights a fighter that fights on DAZN.
For that, he might as well go back to DAZN.
And that's what the story is. That's what the story is now. That he's not only going back to DAZN, he's going back to Matchroom. The reason he can is what you have to question. Because if Al Haymon were able to hold up his end of the bargain, I don't think Canelo Alvarez would be able to terminate the deal prematurely without seeing it through, without seeing it out.
What are you saying?
I'm saying that if Canelo Alvarez is able to terminate the deal prematurely, it's because Al ain't got the money.
Because if he had the money and he could honor the deal, then he might be able to hold Canelo to it.
But because he doesn't have it, Canelo can walk. Canelo can leave. That the deal they reached last year couldn't have been come over to the PBC so that we can set you up against a DAZN guy.
What are you saying?
They're broke. They are fucking broke. The whole thing with Munguia was them trying to adjust to their current circumstances, their current situation.
They're not getting no fucking money from Amazon.
And you trying to make Canelo Alvarez fight Jaime Munguia on your platform for a guarantee he was supposed to get anyway, for that, he can go back to Matchroom and DAZN and likely get more money for that same fight. That for going to you to fight a guy that fights over there, well, he might as well be over there.
You could have been too.
When news first broke late last year that Showtime would be leaving the sport of boxing and that the PBC would be in the market for a new broadcast partner, the people at DAZN expressed an interest in bringing them into the fray.
They looked at it as an opportunity to expand upon their existing catalog of fights. The people at the PBC, they didn't look at it that way. They looked at it as being out of the question.
What could have only been interpreted as an acquiescence of defeat. Fox is giving you the boot, now Showtime is giving you the boot, and you've got no choice but to pair up with the platform that you've been bad-mouthing, you've been diminishing for 4 or 5 years now. It's your only way to stay afloat.
Would have been awkward at first, but if they would have paired up with DAZN, they would have had a lot more stability than what we're seeing now.
It was believed that because Amazon Prime is so much bigger than DAZN, that the PBC would directly benefit from all of their resources, not realizing that the deal structure is not akin to what it used to be with Fox, what it used to be with Showtime, that Amazon is not making the same commitment to the PBC that those networks were.
Just a distribution deal.
Rumor has it, they're not actually giving them any money. And what they are doing is giving them a platform and taking a piece of the pie, taking a piece of whatever comes in, however big or small.
Isn't that what happened on Fox right before they gave him the boot?
It's exactly what happened on Fox, according to Marcos Villegas, who was working in production at the time and in so many words said that Fox wasn't spending any more money on boxing. All they were doing was allowing the PBC to use their platform and taking a cut of whatever comes in.
I'm now hearing that's what's going on at Amazon.
So when you see that a comprehensive schedule of fights hasn't really been rolled out 2 months into the year, and you're seeing that Canelo Alvarez, who was supposed to have a multi-fight deal with the PBC, you're now seeing that he's leaving. He's going back to Matchroom and DAZN.
You hear what the rumors are.
Rumors about the guarantee and who it's got to be for. You hear all this stuff. Does any of this communicate stability or a robust investment from Amazon into the PBC?
No, it doesn't. It communicates the opposite.
Communicates what I've been telling you.